Kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa. Thanks, Charlotte. We put way too many Māori words in there, but when you're trying to revive your Indigenous language, that's what you do. In saying that, I am going to speak my language in this beautiful whare just to start off. Tēnā he mihi aroha kia koutou, with warm greetings of open-hearted love to all of you. Ka nui tēnā he aroha kia koutou. Ki te whare e tūnei mihi atu, to the whare that we stand in, greetings to the house. Ki ngā mana whenua o te rohi nei, to the tangata whenua, to the Indigenous peoples, to the tribes of these nations, of these waters. It is with greetings that we arrive and that we stand here. Ko ai aho, who am I? Who are the waters that run within me? Ko ai he uri, I am a descendant of Ngāi Tahu, of Ngāi Tahu, which are tribes in the South Island. I also too have genealogy. I'm from India as well, from Gujarat, from a little village called Matwad, near Dundee Beach. So sometimes I refer to myself as an Indian, a Māori Indian. So we do understand each other. Really conscious that we are manuhiri, that we are visitors in someone else's land when we travel. And we do that with humbleness, and we do that always with an intention to be a really good guest and to hold that position. So, he mihi anō kia koutou, he mihi aroha kia koutou, ki ngā ringawera I roto I te wharekai, to the cooks in the kitchen, tēnei he mihi aroha kia koutou, acknowledgements to those people who are preparing our food and actually are the backbone to the event today. Ki ngā kai whakahaere to those that have organised this event. Thank you for all of the organisation we have. We've come a long way. I'm going to talk a little bit about why we have decided to come such a long way to this event throughout our talk, but really grateful for the organisation and for the support to be able to get up here. So my name is Dr. Jessica Hutchings. I'm a recovered academic, and I can say that because I've been out of the academy maybe for about 15 years now. I have a precarious salary that goes from research contract to research contract, and now I run a charitable trust with my wife Jo. So I identify as queer, as two-spirited, as Indigenous, serve every margin that there is, and for me that's the place where I can think critically in the space of Indigenous food sovereignty. And so 2 years ago I left my job, Jo still has to go to work because I left my job. Left my jobs to set up a charitable trust to provide some infrastructure in our country of New Zealand around the Māori food sovereignty movement. Because everything that was available to our people in our communities was everything that was at the bottom of the cliff. It was the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. It was the food banks. It was the food missions. It was, attached with housing. But it wasn't actually teaching our people again how to grow food, how to reconnect with our divine Indigenous sexes as Indigenous peoples to restore our food sovereignty. So that's really what our presentation is about today. We're going to take you on a little bit of a research journey. We're going to take you on a research journey around the food system in New Zealand and bust up this notion of New Zealand being clean and green, because the clean and green is based on the foundations of agricultural colonisation and the theft of Indigenous lands. We're going to talk with you about Aotearoa food system. Kai, K-A-I, is our Māori word for food, and atua is our word for deity. So our elders talk about Aotearoa as a food system that is from the cultural landscapes of our deities, that is fit for us as the embodiment of the atua of our deities. So we're growing food from the landscapes of our deities and nourishing ourselves as the manifestation of our Earth Mother. And so that's what Aotearoa means, food for hope and well-being. And then to round off our kōrero, our presentation today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the trust and some of the really exciting work that we're doing in the trust. That's actually, why is it so exciting? For me it's exciting because it's outside of the system and because we get to choose what we want to do. We have to sometimes find funding to do it. but we get to dream Indigenous, we get to be Indigenous, we get to go and connect with our Indigenous brothers and sisters in our own countries and in other parts of the world to reinvigorate native to native foodways again across the globe. And so where did our people come from? Our people came from this side of the world, and also to Taiwan as well, but our people are people who travelled across the water, and often people think, oh, there's so much water between Aotearoa and the rest of the world, you're so far away, but we see it in a really different form. We see water as actually connected between us. And so, yeah, I'll just leave it here, or else I'll go down a rabbit hole. Okay, right. So I just want to start off just by acknowledging that our framework is always within a decolonising methodology. And it's really important for me to skew up this notion of the false objectivity of Western science, the idea that we can be objective. So there's absolutely nothing objective about us, about me. I've already introduced myself, I've outed myself, I've told you I'm Indigenous, I told you I'm mixed race, I've told you where I come from. And so I'm not hiding behind what really drove me absolutely insane in the academy, especially I did a PhD 25 years ago in sciences. I did a Māori feminist analysis of genetic engineering. For some reason they put me on the 4th floor with a whole lot of geologists, so it was really hard to think as a Māori feminist in there, but we got through it. But it's really, this is our reality of doing this type of work in the academy, that we have to be really deliberate about our standpoint. And so, very lucky at the time when I was coming through my doctorate 25 years ago that the work of Linda Jo Smith in decolonising methodologies was emerging. And so it's really from that standpoint that we make this approach into the research work that Jo and I are going to talk about today. Always challenging the false neutrality of Western science. And we work from a framework or a standpoint called Whakapapa Māori. And all that means is that just legitimises our Indigenous knowledge and our way of being as a starting point. So it means methodologically I don't have to explain it in 3 chapters in a book or a thesis before I get to what I want to say. It is a legitimate form of knowing. So white knowledge production, white men, they don't have to explain themselves away before they get to make their point. They just make their point. But for some reason, when I was doing my master's degree, by the time I got to my doctorate, I kind of worked it out, but I kind of probably spent most of my master's degree having to justify my standpoint of indigeneity. So what Whakapapa Māori is it starts us off in that positioning where actually it legitimises our standpoint as being Indigenous. And of course it's about decolonising the academy. I'm going to pass to Jo to introduce herself before I go on.
Ngā mihi kia koutou, kia ora whānau, kia ora family, ko Jo Smith taku. So my name is Jo Smith. I'm from the South Island of Aotearoa. We are Pounamu people, so Pounamu is the greenstone that's precious to us. My mountain is Hutchings. My river is Whakapapa, and my marae is Whakapapa. And I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for allowing us some space to organise this.
Okay, so Kaiatua Māori food systems. I often show this slide when I'm talking to Māori communities, especially when I'm talking to rangatahi or our young people, because if you talk about eating whiteness on the plate, it kind of catches them and it grabs them, and you think about what's around in our global food system, it's refined, and it's processed, and it's the white flours, and it's the white sugars. So contemporary food systems require us to eat colonisation and whiteness in our everyday. And so in the work that we're doing, in the Māori food sovereignty movement in New Zealand, we're looking for every hook that we can to bring our people into this movement. And so while we're recovering our language and our songs and our practices around resource management, and I just want to make a connection to the tuna, to the eels. because the eels for us and the tuna for us are a tonga kind, or a tonga species. And we swim in a river on our farm every day where they brush past Joe, but I don't go out deep enough for them to brush past me. You go out there, but I'm not going out there. So we also do have that very, very deep relationship with our tuna, with our eels, and we call them a kaitiaki species, a guardian species. And so if we see them in our awa and our rivers, we take that as a sign. And it's also a very strong indicator, environmental performance indicator of a healthy ecosystem, having abundant tuna populations. So that's our colonial food system. And here we are in New Zealand. This is what people see in New Zealand. We produce enough food in our country to feed 50 million people. We export most of it offshore. We can't even feed 5 million people, which is our population of our country. So most of our food is made for the commodity markets and it's exported offshore. So we actually export the best of our soil microbes and our nutrients and our clean waters and our clean air. It goes offshore. And then it goes offshore and the water is evaporated from it and it ends up in the market as milk powder. It's just the most ironic process. Agriculture is responsible for half of the country's greenhouse gas emissions. And our waterways are some of the most degraded in the developed world. And more than 80% of them are below quality to be able to swim in. So this is probably a really different story from what people have globally around New Zealand as being clean and green. We're really lucky. We live on a farm and we live high up in Catchment and we have beautiful clean water. But we were in Auckland a couple of weeks ago. It was really hot. We were wondering where we could go for a swim in the Auckland beaches. And there'd just been a big dump of rain. And pretty much all of the beaches are closed because of sewage outflow into the oceans. So it wouldn't even think about swimming in the rivers. So this is from agriculture. This is what's happening in our country in New Zealand. And our biodiversity is under threat. So because New Zealand is an island nation, we had no mammalian predators before colonisation. The only mammal that we had was a little short-tailed bat, so sweet, like so small. And then of course when the predators came into New Zealand, they just decimated our biodiversity. And so at night time in New Zealand, while we're all putting our heads on the pillows and going to sleep, it is murder out there in our bush for our native species, for our birds, for our bats, for our native lizards. And these are from possums, and these are from stoats, and these are from rats. So we have huge biodiversity decline. When we lose our biodiversity, we lose the ability to return as Indigenous peoples to eat our cultural landscapes. So we actually lose our ability to enact food sovereignty. So our food sovereignty is intimately tied up with conservation. And then you can imagine the bits that we do still have forested in New Zealand are locked up within the conservation estate, tied up behind colonial legislation, where we are unable to access our food sources because they are protected. They're under that protectionism mechanism. And Māori and Pasifika people are overrepresented in health and food insecurity statistics in New Zealand. So here we have this kind of image of New Zealand as being clean and green, full of food. We've only been colonised for 200 years, not that long. We've lost basically most of our biodiversity, the highest list of threatened species throughout the world. And we're an agricultural commodities-based country where we export everything offshore. Indigenous peoples cannot feed ourselves from our land because our biodiversity has been so badly hammered from invasive species. So where do we go? We go back to reminding ourselves that this is where our cultural landscapes come from, and this is what our Māori food systems may or may not look like, depending on how you imagine them. This is an animation, just see if this gets going. But part of the work that Jo and I have been doing along with others in the Ngāi Tahu project has been to really help to try and visualise what a Māori worldview of the Indigenous food system or a Māori food system might look like. So this beautiful image here that was done by Johnson Whittihiera, who's an Indigenous designer, who's working with us. And we really want to bring Indigenous design into Māori food sovereignty, because we have to imagine again. We have to reimagine what our cultural foodscapes look like. And so in the middle of this image here, you can see Rangi Nui, who is our Sky Father, right at the top, and just below him is Papa Tuanuku, our Earth Mother. So they're our primordial parents. And then on either side of them are different tiki or different representations from different tribes around the country. So if you had literacy to look at these carved figures, you could say, oh, that one there's from Whanganui, that's from Maimarai. We make Manuka honey, we're honey people. Or the one down the bottom there holding that beautiful leaf, that kawa, we're Rongoa people, we're healers, we work with the ancient healing properties of our medicines. And so, what is our food system? What are Māori food systems in contemporary everyday Aotearoa, where usually you drive around the country and you see paddocks of cows? We have to reimagine it. And we have to come back, as our elders tell us, to connect in with our divine senses, our divine Indigenous senses, to understand what that is. So it's from the mountains to the sea. That's what our Indigenous food systems are. They're from the mountains to the sea. They are from the waterways, from the mountains, travelling right out to the seas. They connect through the stars into the soils, from the microbes in the soils, right up into the stars, into the Māramataka. It was beautiful to see the first presentation today and that reference to the Māramataka, the moon phases. We are having a massive revival in our country at the moment within Indigenous communities to relearn our moon phases and to plant by the moon, to feel our energies as Indigenous peoples within the cycles of the moons. So that connection between soil and stars, for us we do biodynamics on our farm, so we're quite used to, I suppose, making that connection with the preparations that we apply. That's a whole nother pathway to go down, but the connection that the stars are in the soils, and the soils are in the stars. So it depends which way you think about things. So how can we as Indigenous peoples again reimagine the landscapes that our ancestors left us when they left us? And this is the work that we're doing in our Ngāi Tahu project. And so I'm just going to pass to Jo now just to talk about this 3-year project that we've just finished, which was funded by the Royal Society of New Zealand, where we went out and we talked to about 15 different Māori producers at different scales in different parts of the country, working in different ways, and asked them, what is a Māori food system? How are you doing it? How are you envisaging what that is? And what I can say is it's all about diversity, and I'm going to pass it over to Jo to carry on.
Sure, Jess, thank you. Just a caveat to start with. Jess is the main speaker for our trust and for the research that we do. And yes, I am from the Academy, but I was part-time for the last 3 years as we focused on this project, walking the talk on how to be sovereign in our own home space around Kai. So I became a food grower for the first time, and Jess has been the expert for all those years, but for me it's been a pathway to healing, and I acknowledge everyone in the room who puts their hands in the soil, because that is the source of our future well-being. The Ngāi Tahu project is, as Jess said, a 3-year project, and pretty much I'm from a media studies background, but I've decolonised my own self and now am a proud Māori researcher. But I think education and storytelling is at the heart of the research that really reaches our communities. And for us, the Ngāi Tahu project is the project
that seeks to change hearts and minds for our families first, for our Indigenous communities first, and then for our allies who help us on the journey towards a better food story for Aotearoa. And there are quite a few allies who really help us with the work that we do. So, as Jess said, we've been working with a graphic designer to bring to life for our young people too, to make gardening cooler. We've got to kind of get them where the buzz is and try and elevate that buzz, especially for the future generations who will be the descendants that we leave behind. So it's a small-scale study, but with a deep relationship to all of the participants that we engaged with. So only 15 people, but they came from across Aotearoa, from the North and the South Island. We've got a farmer member who's also part of that project. But also we wanted to reach out to our cousins who would connect with the waterways near Aotearoa. So we engaged with people from the Chatham Islands, the Indigenous name is Day1, and also from people in Day1 in the Pacific region. And this is the kind of question that we asked them. In the next few minutes, I'm going to be showing you some slides of the faces of the people who participated and contributed their knowledge to us. I'm going to throw up some of their quotes. I'm going to put up some of their quotes, I should say, and I'll let you read those yourself. But for now, our researcher hat needs to provide some overarching things from the data or from the cordial, from the conversations that were shared with these 15 people. And this is not new information for Indigenous peoples. The fact that our kai, our food, is related to the environment to which it comes from. So the importance of Te Aotearoa is the wider natural systems that surround us. And this wider natural system, as that animation that Jess put up shows us, reminds us that people are connected to landscapes as intimately as they are to their family members. So for us in Aotearoa, as Indigenous peoples, the lands, the waters, the airwaves, the sunshine are all family members. And if we then extend out that idea of the natural system as part of our family, we can say that food is also part of our family. So the process of changing hearts and minds is to reconnect us to food, not as a commodity, but as a really intimate relation. And if we can carry that story out to the wider Aotearoa and also connect the story across the seas to our other Indigenous cousins and family members, I think that's a pathway for a greater food future for us all. So there's two mutually informing things: the idea of the importance of the natural system as a relative attention, and of course learning to listen and understand what the earth is telling us is one of the key lessons that I learned learning gardening. And the second thing, the values and practices that regulate well-being between environments and communities are also crucial to greater food futures. So again, this is not new information for us. Food growers are co-creators and co-producers with nature based on a family connection. So the word Whakapapa is a word to describe genealogy. And part of the finding of the research was that all of the food growers we engaged with treat the natural system and the food that comes from it as something that's got an obligation. There's an obligation there to sustain that food system and to make sure that it has good health. The other key finding is that small is beautiful, small is powerful, small has a rippling effect that can change in our everyday, can change our consciousness. And rekindling empathy, having an empathetic imagination that redefines how we see our landscapes and our waterways is again a pathway to a greater food sovereign future for us as family members and as community members. So here's the first image of a family who shared their knowledge with us. And they're from a really highly intensive dairy area, Taranaki. You can see the tip of the mountain in the background. They grow food for the local marae, for their local community, their local meeting councils. They do that every month, in the months and the days that celebrate or remember the impact of colonisation in this area. I'll leave you to read the quote. So the idea of the ongoing colonial present in our foodscapes is a crucial reminder of the struggle that has to be continued and the power of the practices of the everyday to reclaim our cultural landscapes. And this is the work that Tuiao and Oars, and Oars is an allied family member, and Tuiao is the member who connects to that landscape. We went to the Pacific, we went to Samoa, to an organic cacao farmer, Florist Murray, and she described the ontological, the kind of philosophical relationship between ourselves and soil. I'll leave you to read that too. Giving me life is an extension of who I am. For us at the Trust, the elevation of our deity or our Aotearoa of soil is a prime focus. Hine ahu one, to really value that 10 centimetres of topsoil that produces all the kai, and that's eroding at tremendous speeds, is an important aspect for us. My whanaunga, my family member, Brendan, who is from the South Island, he looks after our fisheries, and he puts bans in place to make sure that our fish stocks are plentiful. He also works to plant trees with a large team to help our waterways through riparian planting. And he has this to say about what a food system is. And the word Ngāi Tahu here means sharing and generosity, and echoes again the words of previous speakers that we had this morning. The importance of the capacity to share is also an important aspect of food sovereignty. Te Rangi Kahiki Kiripātia is an amazing and very charismatic kaumātua elder who has a specialty in the sweet potato, the kumara. The importance of telling stories, the importance of communicating the need for nutrition, the importance of reminding our young ones that commodity foods have no nutritional value, and that a kumara, the sweet potato, has all you need, is the key work that he does. Pania Newton, a land-grant activist who is working to protect our oldest cultivation site in Auckland, a young woman who left her legal profession in order to do this. This is her definition of kai sovereignty, of food sovereignty. And here again, the importance of the knowledge held within the landscapes and our need to share that knowledge with our younger generations is a part of kai sovereignty. So what have we learned? Food is connected to spirit and to genealogy. And this notion, in the title of our talk, is the notion of a Whakapapa ethic. And I'll give you one more word to add to that. It's called tau utu utu. And it's about the mutually It's a mutual reciprocity between nature and people and planet. And it's an Indigenous way of thinking to encourage us to continually improve our relationships and the well-being of the natural systems. And that came through as a very key aspect of the project. And then everyday connection with the Marakai. We must all become gardeners if we're not already, and we must do these things, we must garden every day.
So that's just a summary of the project, and we have a book coming out, which is also two-part of storytelling, and it might seem really descriptive, but these stories haven't been told, and part of the colonial project in Aotearoa has been to sever us from our stories and to actually retell them and relayer them for us. And so part of our work as Indigenous scholars, as Indigenous activists, is to tell our stories. And so that's why we did that project, Ngāi Tahu, Food for Hope and Wellbeing. Because like I say, when I'm talking to my own communities, no one is coming to save us. No one is coming to fix our Indigenous food system. We are the fix for it. So by showing the stories or the inspiration, the beautiful face of Te Rangi Kahiki, that lovely elder who's growing kumara, who doesn't want to go and hang out in the garden with him and plant sweet potatoes and harvest sweet potatoes. So look out for that book. I think it's coming out next year, but we'll definitely let you know. So I just want to finish up just by talking a little bit about Whakapapa Trust and to give you a bit of a snapshot around what we're doing to continue this work outside of research. So this is us up on our farm. We're on 12 acres. I've been on this land for 20 years now. Time goes very fast. We are not tangata whenua there, so we again are visitors on Te Aotearoa on another tribe's land. So Joe and I both live outside of our tribal areas, so very conscious that we don't claim, overstate or overclaim our indigeneity on that land. So we combined research and food growing and education. This was all a dairy farm when we bought this piece of property, and now we've put in it's about 300 square metres of gardens. We live intergenerationally. My mum lives up on the property with us, and we hold events up there. I think last week we had a beautiful crew of people from the Oneida Nation come up, and we shared food, and we walked around the garden, and we shared culture. And so it's actually a place for us to heal and to connect native to native, to be able to rebuild Indigenous ways and Indigenous food systems. When people from Oneida were coming to New Zealand, I was having Zoom meetings and we were setting it up, and they wanted to cook for us, and they wanted to bring seed, and they wanted to bring all these things, and I said, you need to check out our biosecurity website. Do not bring food, do not bring seed, and they will bring you at the airport. But isn't this an example of how colonisation has interfered with our ability as native people to be able to trade our seeds and trade our stories? We have piru in Aotearoa. It's a timer, it's a potato, it's a tonga, it's a prized food, a traditional food. Piru is how we say it, but it comes from Peru. So we traded it, it came over on our waka. We don't have the ability with our colonial biosecurity laws to be able to exchange these seeds anymore. So these are really big issues for us as Indigenous communities holding hands again across food sovereignty movements. I'm looking at that seed swap stall there and going, don't do it, don't do it. More about the trust. We just last week had the most amazing 3-day Indigenous food seed and soil sovereignty symposium. Got to bring the beautiful Dr. Vandana Shiva over from India, which was just truly fabulous to be in her company. And it was really the first time as a nation in Aotearoa when we had come together to talk about Indigenous seed, soil and food sovereignty. And why seed and soil when we're talking about food? Because as Vandana Shiva says, food sovereignty starts in the seed, which needs to belong in the soil, so we need to connect it all up. We also too on day one of that conference spent the first day talking about globalisation and free trade agreements. Just very quickly, we have now got a very racist right-wing white supremacist government leading our country in New Zealand after Jacinda Ardern. Indigenous languages are now banned from government departments. I can't talk about it too much because it really wells up, makes me want to cry. It just goes to show when we think we've locked things down and with the incremental gains that we've made or the previous generations have made, how quickly they can be taken away. Which is why it was so important for us to talk about all these free trade agreements that this aggressive government wants to sign all across they'll sign them with anybody, but then it will just be all commodity driven, more agriculture, rollback of any climate mitigations that the previous government put in place. So really important to share that internationally because that's what's happening in our country at the moment. And seeking hope and change by sharing our pūrākau and our stories. It's definitely the work of the Trust. We're writers, we write lots of books, and our website's there so you can have a look. And we've got this new book coming out, Aotearoa, Food for Hope and Wellbeing. We also run online courses. And we produce summary sheets. So instead of big reports, 60-page reports, things like that, we kind of condense things down into 4 pages with lots of photos and graphics and images. So it's digestible, so you can just get straight to the point. People are not reading lots and lots these days, so how can we just point it out for people, do lots of pictures, that type of thing. And then I've just finished doing almost finished, 8-part TV series on Māori organics. So when we did get to go to Ngāi and spend some time with Vandana Shiva and heard what she describes as her seed temple, the living seed temple, very different from the Doomsday seed bank, which is locked away underground, which I really don't think will be letting Indigenous people into as the first port of call when something happens. So this beautiful living seed temple at Ngāi, they plant the seeds out every year so they're adapting to climate change. They're sharing them, it's living. The seeds are in the hands of women. They're moving, they're being exchanged all the time. So that series will definitely be online. It should be online by about October, November this year, but it also amplifies what Māori people are doing in New Zealand in the organic space. Just very quickly, I always have to do a shout out to our Māori organic verification system, which is called Whakapapa. If you have a look on our website, you can find out some more about that. But we have 4 organic systems in New Zealand. They're all white. Not one of them allows for any cultural expression in there. And so the Māori Organics Group 20 years ago, we started a project to develop our own organic verification system, and this is what it is for Whakapapa, and it's based on our own cultural values. So there's more online about that as well. And then just finishing off, of course, in the garden with a bit of polycropping. This is us, we're growing diversity. We are not digging, we're no diggers. Definitely no diggers in our garden. We chop and droppers, and this is how we are teaching and working with young Māori, young Indigenous peoples about growing food. Don't put the spade in the ground, we've got to look after the soil. Use our soil deity, she's in the Apawani. Kind of hook our young people in that way. And so this is us growing diversity. This is, 7 metre long bed, 1 metre wide, and we probably jam about 10 different crops in there in rows, and everything's just, all protected by the prop above it, all below it. As I mentioned, we do online courses so that we can help with Indigenous knowledge building. Usually Māori communities or young Māori people have to go and learn how to do organics with non-Indigenous peoples. So it's really important that they have Indigenous teachers that are helping them on this journey. And finally, That's our contact information. So there's a bit of a whirlwind through research and through what we're doing in the charitable trust, but we're just trying to spread out and create some infrastructure in a system which doesn't have Indigenous infrastructure in it around Indigenous food sovereignty. Nō i te whānau, i te whare, i te haukainga, ka nui te mihi koutou anō ki a koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.